3. Travel and Things in association with Sun Destinations, iconic destinations with amazing experiences, present In Conversation With. I am your host, David Batsoffen, and today I'm joined by photographer extraordinaire, Andrew Aveley. Andrew, good morning. Welcome to you.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
You're not talking to us from the back of this vehicle, are you?
No, unfortunately not. Monday. And the reality of a professional photographer is you're in my office more than the bush.
Yeah. Let's start there, because people are weird, Andrew, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I sometimes am. Not often, but sometimes. They believe that anybody with a cell phone and a tablet is now a wildlife photographer, and their images can be splashed all over the internet, and everybody goes, ooh, they're beautiful pictures. Meanwhile, half of them are out of focus, and the rest are just rubbish.
Yeah, look, when I was starting out, I was hyper focused on everything being absolutely perfect. But as I've moved on, I like to try and look at different aspects of photography. And as long as somebody gets enjoyment about what they're doing, then I'm with them. But yeah, sometimes with wildlife, I always tell people with the iPhones, you either zoom driving off-road or you get out and you zoom with your feet. And that's when I'm ready with a wide angle lens and I'm recording video for YouTube to make me famous.
I was going to say, make them sign declarations that you can take the pictures and sell it to National Geographic for a large amount of money.
I always say that with first-time guests that are coming. Unfortunately, I do quite a bit in the Kruger, and that's the first thing I tell them. And then I get eyes from the kids the size of apples and all sorts of things. So yeah. So as long as, for me, it's become it's my passion and my job. I chose quite a while ago to do it. But yeah, there are things that, for me, wildlife photography is a personal journey and it's an art form. But as long as I'm out there and I'm enjoying it, this picture in particular, that's my son in the background. And it's I think it was a year before last, this is our golf day. We play golf on a Wednesday. Right. And that was us going to Kruger on a Wednesday with other good friends of mine who have a safari company. You can then see the camera, which I gave him to use as a Canon. So it was a good day.
Well, this is always, so let's go back to a young Andrew. You're just matriculating, and I'm hoping that you did, because I've done no research on you. Did you know at 18 what you wanted to turn into a career, or did your career path to this particular point take as many twists and turns as a Swartberg pass?
Yeah, no, look, and then some. Basically, my photography journey started when I was, was 9 or 10. I used to shoot, I had a little Vivitar camera with a pop-on flash, and I used to shoot film, and I used to just shoot random stuff everywhere.
This was my beginning.
Yeah, I don't even have mine anymore. They are south for the winter. So yeah, when I was a lot younger, I shot quite a bit of stuff, just general fun, Christmas toys, stacks and books and family and pictures of like 1984. I remember when I moved to George in the Western Cape from Port Elizabeth, I've got a picture of the George Mountain in 1984 with snow all the way down to the train line. And those things, look, they're still analog. I haven't got to digitize them, but that's one that sticks out. Finished school, fortunately for me, or unfortunately, did military service, and I wasn't in anything active. It was just at the time where 2 years became 18 months, and then 1 year was the required military. I wanted to study marine biology. People don't realize I actually lived up until just after COVID, I lived in Knysna my whole life on the Western Cape coast. So far from the bush removed, it's quite funny. And then, my father said to me, sorry, you start work. When I came back 5 days later, you're doing your trade. So I didn't really have a choice.
Your work path and mine actually are not too dissimilar, because I too am from Port Elizabeth. Maybe this is why we
Okay.
have a connection. And I too, when I left school, I wanted to be a game ranger. And my parents said, no, you're going to get a trade. So I went off and became an electrician. And it's taken me, the photography was always there, luckily. But so now we both find ourselves in similar positions as to what we do to keep ourselves happy. Rather, what was your trade?
Funny enough, I was also electrician and refrigeration technician.
Okay.
So I did that for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, so I make a joke of it. In the same 3 months, I sold my first house, got married, and bought a business in 1999. So that's when things started going downhill for me from a bush point of view.
Right.
And people also laugh before I think it was 2001
Mm-hmm.
or two. I'd never ever set foot in the bush. I used to tell my wife, because she grew up, her dad was working for Anglo, and he was permanently in the bush, whether it be in the Barberton Hills, whether it be actually in Kruger in the late 70s and
Mm-hmm.
early 80s. He pulled quite a number of the boreholes up in Kruger,
Okay.
67, somewhere around there. And like Kumana Dam north of Satara,
Mm-hmm.
north of Chokwan is one of his. And I used to say to her, listen, don't force me. I've lost nothing. I'm not going to drive around staring at animals all day. And well, yeah, I know. Now,
And here you are
25
today.
years later, I spend more time in 1 month in the bush than she does. So, no, but I know it's funny. I just found my passion. I connect, sort of people think it's more about a marketing line, but my actual sort of feeling is connecting with nature and life. That's
Mm.
who Andrew is, to a
Yeah.
T. It's been a difficult ride, like for everybody after COVID, but I'm slowly finding my way again with my own
That's great.
creativity. And I just concentrate on light.
This is what I've realized. I've been looking at your photographs. You and I met at Safari Guide of the Year. I think it was 2 years ago now. And I think we had a brief chat then, but I've been following you since then. And I've realized that everybody needs, I don't want to say an angle, because that's disrespectful to you and your work. But there are a gazillion of us wildlife photographers out there, all fighting for a very niche market to attract people's attention. And how you do it, and you specifically, is with light. Now, this particular image, somebody may say, well, you focused on the wrong part of the bird. Why did you light its breast and not its head? Because the head is in darkness, and that doesn't work for us. You should have waited another 14 hours until this thing hopped around into the right position for you. But that's not what it is for Andrew, is it?
Yeah, look, and a white-bellied sunbird, if you've seen anything doing a trip on whatever or a race car, this thing doesn't sit still long enough for you to take a photo. But for me, I've got the most important elements for me are the light on the little aloes, and then also those that you can lighten up the bird slightly if you want to on the face. But that's the first time I've ever taken a photo of a sunbird with its mouth open. And that to me was sort of more sitting watching this bird for like 20 minutes while the sun came up. It was still pretty spectacular to see that type of thing for me.
Right.
Normally with sunbirds, some of the different sunbirds, you get their beak and their tongue together. I can't remember. I think it's a scarlet chested. I've got a photo from Kruger, and that's the first time I saw the thin little
tongue.
like its tongue coming out. So it's very, very different for me. But also, I was with a very good friend. We were sitting having two very good friends sitting having a cup of coffee while we waited for guests to. They weren't going on drive; they were leaving the lodge, and we were just sitting there having a cup of coffee, seeing, just morning lights, dappled light, not a breeze, not a noise. I mean, for me, the whole sensory overload with not just the photo was the important bit.
Sometimes, it's like music. If you talk to a musician, they will often say to you, you've got to listen for the silence between the notes, which gives you the music. And it's often the same for photographs. If you have an eye, then you will pick up the stuff that other people don't, which is then what makes you different from everybody else. And then, and turns it into a photograph like this, which is just so spectacular in so many ways. It's the same with this particular one. I do like silhouettes, and specifically with lighting like this. Again, it gives you a story, it gives you a feeling.
So yeah, I mean, just going back to the previous one, I have a number of politically correct or commercially correct photos with the rule of thirds and everything balanced and nothing back. And and a lot of people always see this and they think, well, how did you see it? You've got to see everything, take all the photos. People think even an Impala, they see on whatever platform, nobody posts Impalas. Get yourself an epic shot of an Impala. Start slowly, get there, get all the photos. You are not just going to take an award-winning photo unless you are extremely lucky. And just walk in, snap, and then make $1 million. But just sit and enjoy. Don't force it. I'm a little bit more fortunate being here in the Lowveld now. I can go sit in the garden. I've got a white-browed scrub robin in the garden. I can hear him. I've had to close the door because he's got multiple personality disorder. He's got like 8 or 9 different calls. And he's screaming in the garden at the moment. So, for me, it's just about sitting and enjoying it and watching. And this was even just shot on a single shot. It's not on shooting like a machine gun, 500 shots. It's just about sitting, waiting, looking, and enjoying.
You talk about that. I was on a vehicle recently, and I'm not going to say where, and I'm not going to say from where the guest came, but I had machine gun in my ear, but wrong. It was like a zebra. It's in pitch darkness. You can barely see the thing. And the guy next to me, all I hear is, and eventually both his family and I said to him, why don't you just put the camera down, relax, and enjoy what you're seeing? And he sort of grumbled and muttered, but he did. And then I said to him, what do you do with all these pictures? And he said, I delete almost all of them. I said, then why bother? As you just pointed out, it's a single shot. It worked. You put the camera down and you enjoy the sighting. Otherwise, all you're doing is looking through a viewfinder, and whatever you can't see in your viewfinder, you're not going to notice. So half of your
that's the thing.
Entertainment is gone,
Yeah, you miss 95% of the scene in front of you. And again, you don't have to keep the camera to your eye. If you're sitting like on a safari vehicle, as you would know, you can sit with the camera in your hand, pointing in your lap. And if something happens, you can grab it and put it to your eye and then just go for it. I mean, how many pictures of a sleeping lion do you have to take? I've sat with a guest who pulled a 64 gig card in the space of 30 minutes, and the lion moved his ear twice and his eye 3 times. I understand that they get overwhelmed and it's their trip and they want to like immortalize everything they do. But yeah, it's a lot of hard work going back.
We've all got those hard drives, Andrew, filled with images we've forgotten about. And you take out the hard drive because you're looking for one particular picture and you don't remember where you put it. And then you go, oh, hang on a second. This was a trip to Port Elizabeth I did 11 years ago. Let's see. Oh, these are rubbish images. Why have I still got them? But they're there, and then you say, well, maybe one day I'll need a picture like that. So you don't want to destroy them. I think the cloud is filled with tens of millions of images that will never see the light of day ever again.
Oh, that's been my mission this year. Obviously, as you shoot more photos, you need more storage, and storage is becoming expensive.
It is indeed.
Storage is expensive. So I've gone and started to really, really look hard at a lot of my photos from 2005 when I had a Canon was it an A320 or an A20? It looked like a little brick of margarine. Brilliant. It could take a 5 megabyte photo. It was next level, So I've started clearing the ones that not even any fancy magic software will ever fix. Being brutal and getting rid of it.
My first digital camera was an HP that came together with a printer, and it was a 2 megapixel camera. I still have it. because it sort of picked up on me, and I took it back to be repaired. And they said, no, we don't repair. We can exchange it for you. And I said, no, but now I can get a 5-megapixel camera for the same price. And now you're sitting with the new cell phones that have got 50-megapixel cameras on them. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, look, just after COVID, I just also decided, replacing my phone every 2 years is pointless. I do take photos of fun photos in family and restaurant, and on a vehicle with clients, or on a bushwalk. It's easier. It's just it exchanges so fast at the moment. I just take one step at a time, use what I have. Like this photo, nobody will believe me, but that's a camera JPEG. That's not anything that's gone through 12 hours of post-processing for resizing for the web, and obviously then your contrast and some of that changes. But that's 95% straight out of camera. I don't like using that word because you've got to understand what that means, but I use simple settings in the camera to adjust for my own personal style, and I like to see what I get. And that was shot on a say it was a Canon RF 16 millimeter f2.8, I think, and then a Canon RP. Very light, quick, and easy just to shoot and photograph with. I mean, and there was just a moment that 6 of my students up on, that's the Lavuvu River. I'm a photographic instructor for eco training. And this was their 3rd night, and they all had to take a moment to breathe because there was 2 South Africans and 4 Europeans, and they were completely blown away by what they'd seen and just the nature, not Big Five, but just nature. And no, we finally said, no, well, you guys can bring a beverage of choice, and we'll go down to this little side of the river and have a beverage. And it just took 2 snaps and it just summarized everything for me.
It does indeed. That you like me started off with, let me reach for this. This, believe it or not, was my 21st birthday present, and it still works. There's a roll of film in here at the moment, and the only reason I bring it up is because you were talking about camera settings, and back in the day of film, it was 125 at f8, and that got you everything. You didn't need to worry about anything else. There was no low light. You didn't go out in early mornings or late at night because it didn't work. But 125th of a second at f8 would cover almost anything. And now we've got all these sort of fancy cameras that'll do sort of one candle at 500 meters, and you can photograph. But images like this that tell stories. And I think that's what it's all about. I mean, as you say, you had that guy taking 20 gazillion lion photographs. One image would have told the story. Sleeping lion is a sleeping lion, unless it wants to climb in your vehicle, and then you've got a proper story.
Look, I look at it. I look at it a very simple thing for anybody that's watching. I take 3 photos. If I've got a zoom lens, I take one at 400, one at 200, and one at 100 millimeters. I take 3 photos of the scene. My dad used to tell me you can cut off, but you can't cut on. So you can. Now you've got to just with some software and AI, you can add on to photos and make it bigger. But rather take 3 photos and then find something that works for you. And in between there, you can start looking and being creative. Get at least 3 shots. South African or photographers just go, shoop, they zoom in as far as they can, as fast as they can. So, that's just something I like to use.
Now, I hear what you're saying, because I too, up until not relatively recently, was that let's crop really tight. And then you come back and you put it on your laptop and you go, if only I'd stayed wide. I did it with a sunbird recently, and I'd cropped it with an African barred owlet, and I'd cropped it quite tight, and I started to use the image, and then I thought, no, let's see if there's one of the aloe that was next to it. And that aloe made the image for me at the end of the day. Here again, people may say, oh, hang on, I'm not so sure. Maybe you should have focused on the tree in the background. I'm seeing all sorts of things in the bark in this front, everything from an elephant to Gandalf and most things in between.
Yeah, no, your brain does strange things when you start looking creatively at the subject, like a simple tree, like
Yeah.
this photo. A friend of mine said she saw an elephant eye, and I'm like, okay, I got to look. Oh, there it is. Or a hippo. I got to look really carefully, but I didn't see it at the time.
You see, you took it for a different reason, but this is what happens. I'd seen that eye very quickly. So I started to look for other stuff. Now, just let's use this as an example, Andrew, if I may. Black and white v color. Do all images work in black and white, or do some work better than others?
Well, if you look back at I've always followed quite a few black and white photographers, obviously back in the day with film and that type of thing, and they really didn't have a choice, you know, with shooting black and white. So yes, some are not good, some are good, but believe it or not, the light played the most important role in the black and white photo itself, to establish the photo, how you use the light and what type of light is there. And that's what people sometimes miss the point. They take an image that they really love, but it was taken at 12 o'clock in a game reserve and it's a great sighting. And they say, oh no, I'll make it black and white. It doesn't fix the issue.
No.
But for me, I'm also a bit colorblind with red and green, so I see contrast a lot better.
Okay.
And I actually use my camera's monochrome setting.
Okay.
It becomes a lot easier now with mirrorless, where you can actually see what you get in the viewfinder. But to me, that's how I see my black and white. And I'm one that there must be blacks and there must be whites. So
Yeah.
I need to have no detail in some of the whites and some of the blacks. That's just reality of how we see things. So yeah, I really enjoy black and white. It's sort of if I had the choice to say, I would shoot black and white 75% of the time for my own work.
Well, I see Pentax has now brought out a new black and white only camera, which I think is very limiting. And sometimes I don't quite understand their marketing strategy, although I've been shooting with them for over 40 years. And I've been brand loyal. The other thing about black and white is if you're on one of those game drive vehicles where the ranger wants to be very woke and he will only use a red spotlight on a leopard, lest the leopard be terrified and, you know, hide under a bush. Black and white, if you're using a red filter, black and white works quite nicely then.
Yeah, so and again, look on your DSLR, most of them, or your mirrorless camera, when you go into the menus, you've actually got a red filter, you've got a blue filter, you've got a green filter you can actually use in your camera. So yeah, you've got to look at how and what you want to do. And for me, there's some days, some weeks I mean, yeah, I lost my mojo a few years ago and my wife beat it back into me. I was in Kruger like for 3 weeks in a row and I didn't take a photo.
Right.
Yeah, I just had no connectivity. And then she made me think, and then it's like black and white. I don't always feel it or see it. But when I do see something, I know exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And it's just one frame.
That's all you need. You know, seascapes like this are also truly spectacular. And if you're prepared, I don't know about you. I was in East London some while ago and I asked what time sunrise was. And the guy gave me a time and I said, fine, I'll make sure I'm there sort of 20 minutes earlier. But I'd heard him incorrectly. And it was a cold winter's morning on an East London beach. And I sat there for over an hour waiting for that sun to rise to get the one image that I could have got and gone back to my room and maybe gotten back into bed or into a bath or into a shower to warm up. But sometimes for your art, you're prepared, you know, to do this.
Yeah, look, this particular picture, you talk about timing. If I would have shifted a little bit to the left and taken that rock that's in the background out, you would have seen the sun. You basically have 8 days in the year where you can shoot that sun in between that rock.
Okay.
So this is one of my best friends from my time in Eisner. His dad was Ian Fleming, one of our sort of more original OG photographers in film and stuff. I was going to say his famous line was F8 and be there. That was what he used to tell people. But this we fondly called it the crack.
Okay.
Warren and I made up the name. People still refer to it as the crack, which makes me proud.
Right.
And you know, also with the tide, you had to be very specific. There was maybe with good light, there was maybe 2 days with this type of thing you could shoot. Any other time of the year, this was near summer because to the left of the photo, that's where the sun sets in, this is at Brenton-on-Sea, and in winter it would have set to the right-hand side of the frame. So normally we would just go there, especially with a cold beverage, and just enjoy the light. You'd sweat the beverage out walking up the mine shaft to get back up the cliff here, but yeah, I just really enjoyed everything that there is to this image, the movement, the flow, the noise, and being there with like-minded people.
Yeah, that's always what makes it special. You know, we've been talking about F8 and 125 and that type of thing. I always worry about people who get it's like if you scuba dive. My diving instructor said to me, unless you can pull treasure out from below 40 meters, it's not worth it to wear a t-shirt that says, I've gone more than, you know, I've dived to 100 meters. Your chances of dying are much higher. And it's the same with people who are not professional photographers, but they've got a really nice camera and now they want to shoot on manual because somebody said to them that manual is the holy grail of photography. And they're losing shots, you know, right and center because their settings aren't correct.
You know what? There's a green button on most cameras.
Yeah.
You know how much money they paid that little man who lives in your camera from where it was built to work everything out for you. You need to respect him and use him where you can. So yeah, auto is not bad. It's the fact that, you know, if you're not sure, take the photo, get a great photo, because you didn't adjust all the settings. It doesn't mean you didn't take the photo.
Exactly.
And that's how you can learn.
Yeah.
You know, I say to people, would you rather get a good photo or would you try and redesign the wheel in 10 seconds and miss what you see?
Exactly.
And yeah, so I teach a very different style of photography. Sometimes I get chastised for being pretty aggressive or rude or sarcastic or self-opinionated, but you know, you can see something in somebody and they're doing everything in their power to ruin their own enjoyment with photography.
Yeah. What do they say? They pull defeat from the jaws of winning. This image, when I first saw it, fascinated me. It really and truly did, because the rhinos are almost an afterthought, but it makes it really and truly does. The composition on this is just spectacular.
And that's a Kruger Park image. People say don't take photos of animals in the road or don't include man elements.
Yeah.
That's because of the exposure and because it was pouring with rain. Everything was slightly overexposed. It just looks a little bit differently. If you underexpose that, you can see the dirt road, no problem. But yeah, rhinos, as with a lot of people, have a special place in my heart. And to see them in Kruger nowadays is actually sort of more how can I say, a privilege than something you can guarantee somebody to see. There are 1 or 2 areas where you can go. These 3 are actually part of a crash of 5. I see them pretty regularly, but I know where to go, and I have a reasonably good success rate. But that was just stopping. I think this was taken with the fantastic plastic, I call it, the Canon RF 600 f11. And I stopped far enough away from them not to make them skittish, scared. There weren't many other vehicles. Obviously positioned myself downhill, just turned the car sideways, and we watched them, and they just stood there maybe 20 minutes.
Wow.
And just
moving makes those sort of things very special.
Yeah, and I had a friend with me from Worcester who's also not experienced the bush very much, and he just sat there with his mouth open. So yeah, that's even more special.
Now, this image, I think, is your Facebook header image, which I liked. And also it gets people to know where they can find your work, or find if you if they want to join you on a safari. How long did you wait for this picture?
There's a lot more to the scene. We were there for an hour.
Right. Okay.
So it was a sub-adult male with his mother, and basically he was at the bottom of the tree, top of the tree, all over. She just wanted to sleep and relax, and he came up there, and that's her looking sort of sideways, but he got a smack after that. So one of the fortunate things in some of the places, I know you were recently up in the Lowveld, in the sands, and that area. There's some places you can go that you can just, without a rush of vehicles, if you take the time, you can take some really cool photos. And I mean, my wife was one of those machine gun photographers with that set sighting, because she's also set the camera, take pictures, set it, stop working, set it, give back. So and she shot wider. She shot a lot wider with a 7200. So there's some spectacular images of the whole the Mapani tree and or marula or whatever it is, and it just turned out spectacularly. And I really liked that photo, and I recently been working again. My website is up and running, but the old one I had to take down. It was 10 gig of data, and it was 15 years old. So yeah, the new one is up live, but there's lots of holes in it. But the important stuff, I do a page every day.
Fair enough. Andrew, we're running out of time, would you believe? This is the problem when you get a guest like yourself that can talk passionately. We will do this again. There's too much to talk about. So before I let you go, and say a big thank you for being on In Conversation With. If people want to get hold of you, if they want to do safaris with you, how do they find you?
Facebook, it's Andrew Aveley. My personal profile is public. My Facebook page is Andrew Aveley, photographer and private guide. All my websites, andrewaveley.co.za. And then my wife and I have a small tour company which we specialize in photographic destinations, guided or unguided, and that is wildexpressions.co.za.
Great stuff. Andrew, once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to chat with you and to reconnect, and who knows, maybe I'll find myself in one of your vehicles in the not too distant future.
Anytime. I'm in White River, so just let me know when you come down to the Lowveld. Always happy to have a coffee. I've got good coffee on the brew all the time.
Great stuff. My guest today on In Conversation With has been Andrew Aveley, photographer extraordinaire. If you like what you saw, go to his website, go to his Facebook page, book a tour. You won't be disappointed.